Education, the fifth and final film from the Small Axe movie TV
Anthology film series.
anthology, yeah, anthology film series from the one and only Steve McQueen. And this one examines a child going to school in is it London? I'm trying to
Yep.
remember. Yeah, London, and
Like
um,
early 80s, I think. Late 70s, something like that.
yeah, his name is Kingsley. Yeah, we'll say it's the 70s. And Kingsley is a boy who struggles to read, and the school he's in um, labels him as special, labels him as basically not intelligent enough to be in that school, and he has to go to a special school where there is no structure, there's really no dedicated staff or teachers, and it's only like furthering his like falling behind in school and the lack of help he gets. And this is I think this is the shortest thing behind Alex Weedle, or shorter than
Yeah.
Alex Weedle by
They're
3 minutes
both
or
like
so.
60 something minutes. Yeah.
But I think McQueen does a really good job in just an hour of highlighting the structural racism within these school systems that were designed in some sense to hold black people and people with disabilities down. Because I mean, if this was the education that these people are getting for simply struggling to read, when it seems like maybe some attention and care could really come about in a different way, or maybe just having more dedicated teachers um, could have helped them really catch up. Uh, I just thought it was really expertly done, and especially following Alex Weedle, which was probably my least favorite of the five. This one really stood out to me for the effectiveness of the storytelling in just a short period of time. How were you feeling watching Education?
Yeah. Still, obviously, because of its briefness, uh, it feels more episodic to me than the first three did. But I think that conciseness is more effective than Alex Weedle, like you said. And I think what stands out, like obviously, it's well shot, it's well thought out, it's obviously for the most part still subtle in what it's getting at, like all of Small Acts. But what I think makes Education like a nice inclusion in this series is that it's looking at a different side of systemic racism, and namely that like these biases and clearly intentional decisions to hold back and move around West Indian youths. This is a less in the public eye form of systemic racism, right? This is not the police beating people up and arresting people for no reason.
Mm.
And I think it's important to highlight that there are lots of sides to this, because the blatant racism and even like the stuff that happens to Leroy Logan, Red, White, and Blue, that stuff's still obvious when you see it. And it obvious that it's wrong and should be fixed, right? Uh, Something like this is just harder for people to be aware of, that it's even happening to them, and that they are being wronged. And like Education does a good job of you know showing you those activists, and the fact that like the community had to fight and spread awareness and organize and unify themselves to have any hope of even uh, improving this, because the first step was just making sure people even knew it was happening, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's an important thing to show.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of scenes that really stood out to me from this. The first was obviously when Naomi Aki shows up as Hazel,
Yeah.
who shout out to her from the End of the Fucking World season two. Um,
Rise of Skywalker.
and yeah, and she comes in and just totally changes the atmosphere of that classroom, and just how quickly all those children like respond to her. And then juxtaposed against the white teacher who's playing his guitar, playing, what was it, like the Zombies or something like that, over and over.
The animals.
Yeah, the Animals, that's
Yeah.
what it was. Just a real, I think, highlight of this for me. And then the other scene that I think really stood out in terms of like identifying the importance, and one of the messages I think McQueen really highlights throughout all of the small acts, which is understanding yourself, learning your own background, but also I think being taught by people within your culture and people who understand you is at the end when Kingsley goes to the it was like the homeschool or whatever it was that was being run, where him and his sister went, and then he reads to his parents at the end, and just really highlights, I think, the importance of having black people teaching black people of all different races and identities being taught by people who can understand their experiences and connect with them in different ways. And um, I think that message of like education and understanding yourself and those within your culture is really really strong throughout all of these, and I think highlighted well in education.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a great film series to be a part of. I'm really happy again that it was week to week over 5 weeks. Um, Obviously, there are some that are easier to highlight than others, namely Mangrove and Lovers Rock. But
Mhm.
obviously, still happy we got the whole thing. And fittingly, this was capped off with the Los Angeles Film Critics Group awarding Small Axe their Best Picture.
Hmm.
Not Mangrove for Best Picture, but Small Axe. All five movies win Best Picture, which is, uh, I think, a really ridiculous way to continue this conversation about defining small acts. Because even with that critics group, like Lovers Rock was nominated for something else. So like you're separating small acts into the five films that it is, but also awarding the whole body. Like I don't know. I feel like that was
Yeah,
a step too far. Best
I,
Picture, small acts.
I think next year when the Emmys come out, it'll just be TV movie, right? Like, and this will
Yeah,
definitely win,
we already know
my
Amazon's
opinion.
running it as at the Emmys.
So yeah, I think that kind of puts to bed that it is a film, but just in this anthology format. Just looking at small acts in general, are there any like scenes, moments, anything from it that really stand out to you or sit
Mm.
with you?
I mean, it's definitely a lot of those lovers rock scenes where everyone's like dancing and
Hmm.
singing together for sure. And then, I mean, some of the Mangrove stuff early on is quite horrifying, but also like the way Mangrove ends was really good. Definitely as we said before, market correcting Child of Chicago
Yeah,
7 in the process. And then favorite acting was definitely Boyega throughout Red, White,
yeah.
and Blue. The pool,
Mhm.
billiards room scene stood out.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
of good moments.
I think you highlighted the main ones for me. I think also the courtroom stuff was just really, really well shot, really captivating filmmaking. So, if you have time to watch it, especially as we're reaching the end of the year and a kind of a dead period for new things, I mean, we'll have some catching up to do over this time, but um, this is a good chance to dig into some really good films and or TV shows, however you want to put it.